Jan Price talks to the movers and shakers in the film business. The Jan Price Show, all about movies.
You're listening to The Jan Price Show, and today my guest is writer-director Thomas Mazziotti, and we're going to be talking about his brand new film called The Mimic. Welcome to the show, Thomas.
Thanks very much, Jen, for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. This movie, it has, for me, I felt there were so many different levels to this movie and so many different ways that you can interpret this film. And that's what I like about a movie. At the end, you kind of go, okay, let me think about that a little further, a little deeper. So our listeners know what we're talking about. Do you want to give a little synopsis of what The Mimic is all about?
The film is about a screenwriter that runs into this unusual character in the local town newspaper who may or may not be a sociopath, and he's intrigued enough to follow it out to see where it takes him. So that's basically what it's about.
And it's a lot more than that, but that's a good start with it. Yeah. Now, you wrote this, and you say it's based on a true story. So talk a little bit about that. What did inspire you to write this, and what is it based on in your own life?
Well, I did run into this rather unusual person about 5 years ago. And when you don't know, Jen, what's happening while it's happening. It has to end for you to realize what happened. And the ending came for me in the first 5 minutes of the movie, which is verbatim the truth. So when that happened, I knew it was time to move on, if that answers your question.
Not really.
Okay.
You're being very opaque about it.
That's all right.
That's all right. Well, this movie. It's the tagline under it is the lighter side of being a sociopath. So, and that is a big. Obviously, there's lots of discussions about sociopaths in this film, and there's actually been a lot of discussion about sociopaths and a lot of people's conversation over the last 4 years or so, as we've seen some of that acted out on the public stage. But what was it about the person that you met that triggered you to look into someone who might be a sociopath?
Well, some of them, there's a mirroring aspect to it, which I've never seen in film, which is in this movie, where they copy what you do, and they even using the same words that you're using. I remember very specifically, I was in this Italian restaurant, and I said to him, "This is some of the best Italian food I've ever had in the East Coast. What do you think?" He says, "I think this is some of the best Italian food I've ever had in the East Coast." So it's exact. I mean, and he says it so fast that it doesn't register, and then you realize later on what's happening. So that's the mirroring part of this is fascinating. It hasn't been done before.
No, and it is fascinating. There was a number of things for me. I mean, and we'll get into a lot of them. But I love, just before I get into a lot of that, I love the dialogue because it was very. It reminded me of His Girl Friday. Those kinds of movies from the 1940s where the dialogue is crisp and fast and snappy, and that's what was in this movie, which you don't see very often. You just don't see it. So, what made you decide to write in that kind of manner, in that kind of, it really is a 30s, 40s style?
Well, because I don't think people change, Jan. They just talk faster. So, it's the same. It's the same for me. It's you summarize quicker and you say exactly what you think, and no moving around. So yeah, thank you for saying about the 30s and 40s, because those pictures still stand up today. I think a lot.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I mean, how many times you can see His Girl Friday over and over again and pick up something new, a new nuance or something in the way that the lines are delivered between Cary Grant and Rosalind Russell. It's just it's a true classic. So yeah, and that's reminded me of, but two men. doing, sharing that kind of dialogue. So let me for me, this was like a theater of the absurd, a Waiting for Godot kind of film, an absurdist kind. Did you have that in mind when you were writing it, or is that just everybody? That's what I like about this movie, because everybody who watches it can interpret it, and I have other interpretations of it too, because it's one of those movies that is said you really think about. You have to think about it. But it's enjoyable. But go on. Was that something that you were looking for when you were writing it?
Well, the last 15 minutes, it comes together, and you realize, after you're intrigued of where this is going, what it's all about. You know what I mean? So it's really it's written in episodic format. So the whole idea is to pull you in, so you're so intrigued that you can't wait to see how it ends. So that was really my onus in doing this, because when it was happening, that was how I felt. That restaurant scene, for example, when that conversation was happening in real life, I looked around, Jan, and people were staring at us. Now we're talking about it. So I figured if they're staring at us when it happened in real life, they'll stare at it on the screen. So
and that restaurant scene is one of the many memorable scenes in that film. You've got a great cast. Thomas Sadoski, who I think is a wonderful actor that you don't see as much as you might like to see him, and I wish we see more of him. And Jake Robinson, I had not seen him in anything that I was familiar with, and he's just wonderful. So talk a little bit about the casting and how you cast, because you have a great cast. He's got Austin Pendleton, Gina Gershwin, Mary Lou Henner, Tammy Blanchard, it goes on, and Emmett Walsh, and Jessica Walter. And I do want to talk about Emmett Walsh in that scene. But how did you cast this film and attract Thomas and Jake to this project?
The entire cast has heavy theater backgrounds, everyone in the film. So they are very used to dialogue, and I can shoot longer take because of that, and they get very comfortable because I don't have to keep changing the camera and the lighting. So that was one of the main attractions to them was the kind of dialogue it was, because like you said earlier, you don't get a chance to do this kind of thing very often. Jake Robinson, this never happened with, by the way, Austin Pendleton, I worked 20 years earlier on another film I did, so I knew him. And Jake Robinson came into, and this never happened before, a very early reading. He was the first person I ever read for it, and I never saw anybody else. I knew what I wanted, and that was him. So that was it was very unusual. That's exactly how he got in.
He's absolutely adorable. I mean, just adorable. And I look forward to seeing him in other things. So I just really enjoyed watching him. And Thomas Sadoski has a very strong theater background. He's done a lot of theater. So that came through on this also, in the way, again, that dialogue, as you're talking about, that, you have to have actors who are really comfortable with that much dialogue anymore, going back and forth. That scene with Emmett Walsh, and is it Doug Plout? Is that who else was in it?
Yes.
Okay. So talk a little bit about that. Because I enjoyed that, because all of a sudden then in my mind, the movie switched a little bit differently for me. So talk a bit about that and why you put that in there and what the scene is, so our listeners know what we're talking about.
Oh, it's about you actually see the writer-director of the movie in the middle of the movie talking about what you're seeing. And the reason that was done was because I don't like exposition. I don't like to write exposition. So I put all the exposition in one scene. And there are things said in that scene that nobody in the film could say except the people that made the movie. So that's why that scene.
I thought it was fascinating. You're very different.
Yeah.
To put that in there.
Yeah, because Doug says things about his wife that no one would know, character would know. So that was very important of why he stays with her and she stays with him. So it's important.
It is important. So for me, again, other levels. So I looked at this film as it could be on different levels, reality versus illusion, because you wondered and because of that scene also, you begin to wonder, was the screenwriter creating this in his mind because he was going through the grief of the loss of his wife? So was this real? Was this person person real? The person that he sees is mimicking him, and was he creating this all in his mind? So that was one of my my thoughts. Is that something that you were thinking about, or is that just an interpretation that I came up with?
Well, I've heard that often, but as it goes on, you realize it's two different people. But initially, some people think that, but as it becomes apparent, it's two entirely different people as you're watching it. But I never thought of that when I wrote it, but that's a fascinating way to read into it.
Oh, good.
You know?
As I said, you can look. As I said, I thought, well, maybe this is an illusion. Maybe he's just created this person in his mind. But well, it's fun movie. How did you attract? I mean, you had, as I said, this great cast. So how did you attract Tammy Blanchard and Jessica Walter and Gina Gershon to the Mary Lou Henner? You've got such a great cast. How did you attract them to this project?
Well, actually, some of them had lived in this area where I live and where I shot. So they knew of the area. So when they were reading it, they had a visual, which was really something, because I didn't know they lived here. Like Didi Khan lived 4 houses away, and I did not meet her till I was on the set with her.
Oh, that's wild. That's wild. Yeah.
Really something.
Yeah. That is wild. So how long did it take you to write this?
About a year and a half.
Oh, not very long. And then how long did you actually get it produced?
We shot in 2017. So obviously, because of the pandemic, there was a delay, and also this kind of movie takes much longer to edit than most movies because it's so precise. So that took some time. So all in all, 3 years from start to finish.
Well, that's not too bad. I mean, so many independent films take years and years and years, so to get them going. So, this is the first time you've written a script. Is that correct? Original screenplay.
Yeah, I've done 2 other movies before this in the 90s, and they were. So this is my first original. They were based on short stories. So that's right.
And that's when you worked with Austin Pendleton before.
Yes, and Charlie Hobo in the 90s, and it's 20 years later. He just walked in, and he just like I just saw him yesterday. He's just that type of person, Yeah,
he's wonderful. He's absolutely wonderful. So, where did you shoot this film? You talked about where you shot it, where you live. Where did you shoot it?
Oh, it's about 10 miles up above Manhattan, right out around the Hudson River, and it's this very secluded private area. And it was much easier for me because you can get to every place with everything's about a mile away, Jan. So you're not transporting people for a long time, and we can get there and spend more time once we're there and not worry about coming back and a long drive back. So that was very important. I got to shoot where it actually occurred.
Now, does the person who inspired this, are you still in contact with that person? Is he aware of this film?
No, I have not talked to him in years. I avoid the post office like the plague. All right, that's the only prerequisite. I don't go to the post office, but I have no idea. But it's very complimentary, especially at the end where he helps him. You know what I mean? And that is entirely from my imagination. That is my projection. Because if that really happened in real life, there'd be no film. You know what I mean? So that was my projection.
Oh, definitely. What did you learn? I mean, did you go? What did you learn about sociopaths when you were doing this film? I mean, obviously, you did a lot of research on it. So what? Maybe some people aren't aware what a sociopath is. So maybe we should describe what a sociopath is.
Well, it's usually a person that has no empathy in one sense. That's the main thing that you always hear about that. They don't seem to have a conscience. They don't know right from wrong, and they're very steady. They don't go with high emotions. It's just all handled very matter of fact. And they turn situations on you. For example, that Austin Pendleton scene when he's in the truck. See how he dismantles him? This is a guy that's following our main characters a little too close in his car. And just because he was tailgating, the Jake Robinson character gets out and dismantles him about having a bad marriage, and that's why you drive too close, and you should think about your life. And that's what sociopaths do. They dismantle you in a very calm way. So that seems a classic example of that.
It is interesting. Let's talk about the restaurant scene, because I do love that. That was really well, it was a big portion of the film too. But the of why was it in this book? Because there's a reference in the movie to a book. Is that a real book that you are all referencing?
That was a national bestseller called A Sociopath Next Door, and I can Google it, whether it's in and the doctor wrote it. She just wrote another one because it was very successful. And that quote I use is right on the cover of this bestseller she wrote. So it is 1 in 25 people is a sociopath. So that was that's why the whole restaurant scene, they're counting the people of how many other people are there to see if they are one. So I didn't do that in real life, but it was in my it was in my head.
It's very funny.
Thank you.
It's a very funny scene. It really is. So what else? So did you, because of having this person that you felt was a sociopath in your life, and obviously this spurred this on, but did you realize at the time that he was? What spurred you to go try to do the research to find out that he was a sociopath?
I would say once the way the movie opens, which I don't want to ruin, but the way that movie opens is happened in real life. So when I saw that, I said, okay, that's the opening. You can go through something, but unless you see a clear way in and a clear beginning to put it all together, which I didn't have until that happened, and thankfully my dog is okay. But until that happened, I didn't have a way in, and then it all solved itself. Once you have a way in like that, and those characters are that clear, they take you where they want to go, Jan. So I hope that, yeah.
So again, was this writing this film cathartic for you in that sense? Was this person was out of your life when you started writing this? Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. So was it something that you felt cathartic, or did he just spark that creativity in you to decide to write about using him as a guide, maybe a muse?
He was my foil.
Yes.
Foil is a good, yeah.
Foil, okay.
Foil is a good, yeah. That's what he was. But then I made sure I put in the script for my own mental benefit, where the Sadoski character says, I'm making you much more interesting than you really are. That's really important for myself. Because I did.
So go ahead.
I also wanted to quickly say there's when they had dinner later on in the film at the kid's house, that came from when I had dinner at the real person's house. And I've never been in a dinner where I was in and out in 45 minutes. And I was across from the table where this person sat to the left and said nothing, and his wife stared at me and she said nothing. And it was very odd, to which I finally said to the wife, you would be a great witness in court. To which she and he sort of giggled, but I felt so trapped. And that's how that scene came about, when you see what happens to him in that scene, how he felt trapped. That's how it sparked.
Oh, okay. So you did live that. So why is his wife, I guess the mimic's wife, why is she never really seen? And that's what you kind of go, was she real? Was he really married? Did he really have a wife? How did that come into play? Is it because this woman that you met really didn't say anything and she was sort of invisible, so you created this invisible character who's a main character? I mean, we don't see her, but she's talked a lot about film.
Yeah, that was part of it, that she does exist, but I wanted to leave that mystery, because it's really immaterial what she looks like or doesn't. It's just that she's there, and that mystery really works, because once you show, it's not mysterious anymore. So I just really I didn't think it was necessary, and that's why I made that choice. Interesting.
And it is. She is a mystery, and we do wonder what, was she, again, something that this person created, or did she actually exist in it?
Well,
Go ahead.
I remember when he says, how can any woman stay married to somebody like that? I mean, that's what Sadoski says. So best not to show her. This way it could be any woman, not a specific type of woman. You know what I mean? That was my understanding there.
Yeah, definitely. So the tennis scene, which again is that's where the dialogue really takes off in that scene. So how did that come about? What made you decide to have them play tennis, the bantering back and forth over the tennis net?
Oh, because it was leading toward a catharsis. There's your catharsis, and how you can make it really interesting at the same time. And because of what they're doing, it's going back and forth. Tennis is very symbolic. You can read all sorts of things into tennis. And in reality, neither of them played tennis. I made them look that good, but neither of them knew how to play tennis, which was quite a challenge. But yes. You wouldn't know that when you see it.
No.
But you, because I don't want to say too much, but you see how Jake talks to him based on a deep understanding that you would never think he would have from the fact that he's a plumber, and is able to see things that Tom's character didn't know he could see. In terms of having an original thought after watching a picture where he had no original thought. So that's how that came about. And I can tell you, in reality, I never, that tennis match never did happen. But I remember when I was playing just a short game with him, and the ball was when they get heavy, they don't bounce. So and this was the first. I'm telling you this because this is the first idea I knew I was going to write the movie. And I said, okay, next time I'll just get some new balls. And he whipped out his phone, and Jan, it was in 15 seconds. He says, just ordered 50 from Amazon. We'll have them we'll have them tomorrow. No problem. No need for you to buy anything. It happened so quick that I went, wow.
Wow.
And, wow. I mean, that was, it was so submissive. I said, okay, there's something here. I continued to play. I felt myself doing things just to get material. You know what I mean? Because that whole sequence when he's following him in the truck, this is in a sequence where he's following him in the Vespa, that whole action scene. I remembered I was a few minutes short in the script, and I literally went outside to go to the store. And I encountered him, and that happened. And I went home and sang, "Oh, I have my last 5 minutes." It was that. It was that matter of factly, like it just happened.
Wow, that's amazing. That is amazing. That you would, yeah, it is amazing. Well, where can people see The Mimic? We only have about a few more minutes. About 30 seconds or so.
Oh, sure. It's on iTunes, on all the on-demand files. It's on all the big services across the country. It's in some theaters if you're lucky enough to live in the area where you can go. But if you check on your on-demand, you'll see it.
You can find it. Well, I do recommend it. It's a very fascinating film. It's
Amazon Prime. Yeah. Thank you.
Oh, good. It's a smart film, and it has many levels to it, and it makes you think, and it's a great one to watch with somebody and have a discussion with about it afterwards to see how everybody else has viewed the film. So, good luck with the film, Thomas, and I appreciate you being on the show.
Oh, thanks for taking the time, Jen. I appreciate it.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome. You can listen to The Jan Price Show whenever and wherever at thejampriceshow.com, where all my shows are archived, and also on the iHeart Podcast Network, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, YouTube channel, anywhere where you listen to your podcast. You can also like us on Facebook and see what's coming up on the show, and follow us on Instagram and Twitter at The Jan Price Show. Thank you for listening.
Jan Price talks to the movers and shakers in the film business. The Jan Price Show, all about movies.